Our speaker today is Mike Franch, an ethical culture leader who is a longtime resident of Baltimore, Maryland. Mike is also connected with the First Unitarian Church of Baltimore, where he is currently affiliate minister, and he speaks at a number of Unitarian places as well as ethical societies. Mike has a PhD in U.S. history and knows a wealth of information about a broad range of topics. You can go ahead and ask him, he will tell you. Some of you may recall Mike's most recent visit when he was the caller for our English country dance here in this very room, and that was a few years ago. Mike and his wife Eileen are avid dancers, callers, and musicians in the country music scene. Mike is also a concertina player, and I happen to know his concertina is around. If you want to hear a song or two afterwards, you might press him for that. He's also a founding board member of the Maryland Green Burial Association. He's an urban bicyclist and a dedicated composter. I can know this for sure because he is bringing his own apple cores back to his home, knowing that our composting is a little bit on the lighter side. So this is dedication. Anyway. So today, Mike's address is Patriotism and Pride, Affirmations of a Grateful American. So please welcome Mike to the lectern.
Thank you, Bart. It's great to be here. I too found the music very exciting, not only for the musical qualities, but noticing how close the back legs of the piano bench were to the steps there. And so it just would take a little bit of a nudge and we'd have a very dramatic performance there if you See, that's the thing about it. See, that's the thing about ethical culture. You point out a problem in society and it's fixed right away. Somebody gets on it. That's really great. I guess I have to say that first that, this sermon, this talk, platform address, which I hope you'll find relevant, was not written in response to current events. It was actually, you're getting a somewhat used talk. But it still seems very, I think, up to date. I first wrote it back actually in 2003, and it's been adapted. And I wrote it on what I still think of as Armistice Day, but is now called Veterans Day. And I began that day like I began at least most national holidays, is when I went out to bring in my morning newspapers. I took the flag out of the umbrella stand by the door and went and screwed the two aluminum pieces of the rod together and hung it on the bracket on one of my front porch posts. And I like to fly the flag on national holidays. It's just something I get a kick out of. And it's because of this I was taken aback when a friend of mine said, "Oh, you're a patriot." And oh my goodness, patriots are, to me, being a patriot had this sort of vaguely right-wing connotation. I was not used to, I think of like Samuel Johnson, who called patriotism the last refuge of the scoundrel. But on reflection, yes, I think I am a patriot. I am a lover of my country. While I resonate to Thomas Paine's proclamation on the rights of man back in 1791, that my country is the world, I also feel that I am fundamentally an American. I couldn't see myself moving someplace else if I didn't like it here. Of all the places in the world I care most about this place. I have immersed myself in its history. I take joy in my active participation in its civic life. I believe deep down that we Americans can be a force for great good in the world. So I'm a patriot, a lover of my country. And just as I refuse to abandon the flag to the political right or concern for the family to the religious right, I claim the term patriot. It is not the exclusive possession of any one political viewpoint. But don't expect to see a "proud to be an American" bumper sticker on my car. These stickers, which were more common a number of years ago than they are now, and we used to see them proclaiming the power of pride and American flags on them. They've sprung up all over since September 11th of 2001. And today it's, more "Make America Great Again." They seem emblematic of, this pridefulness of the government's behavior since that time, which I believe has been characterized by arrogance, dishonesty, and a disregard for human rights. These things have moved me in this morning's reflections, in which I'll look at pride, shame, and gratitude. And what I'm going to say this morning can be summed up thisly. I'm not proud to be an American. Indeed, I view certain manifestations of pride to be dangerous to our country's future. Sometimes I feel ashamed to be an American. Shame, I will argue, is essential to patriotism. Finally, I am grateful, deeply, deeply grateful that I am an American. And that's why I called this talk an affirmation. Gratitude with its responsibilities, rather than pride with its arrogance, is the emotion of patriotism. So remember, if nothing else as you leave this morning, pride, shame, gratitude. We're proud in this country. Let's consider pride first here. We're proud of our military power. We're proud of our economy. We're proud because we wrongly believe we have the best healthcare system in the world. We seem to feel that just being an American bestows upon us the status and stature and the right to bestride the world with a sense of entitlement. Our prideful effusions are interesting, considering the depth of our culture's warnings about pride. Look back 2,400 years when the authors of the book in the Bible that we call Proverbs included many admonitions against pride, including when pride cometh, then cometh shame. The Lord will destroy the house of the proud. Pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. Pride is the first of the 7 deadly sins. Consider this wonderful petition in the liturgy of the Anglican Book of Common Prayer of 1662. From pride, vainglory, and hypocrisy, from envy, hatred, and malice, and all uncharitableness, good Lord, deliver us. Poor pride is in very bad company here, and indeed a harbinger of worse things to come. But even in talking about poor, wicked pride, we need to make distinctions. Like cholesterol, not all pride is bad. Let me make a distinction here between what we might call, good pride and bad pride. That there are just several kinds of pride. There's vicarious pride. This is the inherited pride based on status, derived not from one's own merit, but because somebody else did something. An example would be the pride of the blue blood, the Mayflower descendant or the daughter of the American Revolution or the son of the Confederacy, that the person who feels they have status because an ancestor did something. This is related to the pride of identification with the achievement of others. We see a lot of that with sports teams. I heard one of the groups was talking about that before. Whether it's collegiate or professional or whatever. And also it identifies then from that to country. But the we're number one mentality, you see people at football games with those big hands with the finger up, we're number one. What's this business with we're? It's the people down on the field They may be number one. The people in the stands are just fans. But, such is their identification that they feel, that they have achieved something because their team is a good team. This is the pride that leads to arrogance. I believe that this pride and its associated arrogance have led us into our present difficulties in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in much of the Middle East, in much of the other places in the world, where we can come in and apply our interests and our power and the ends that we want, and that we will just fix everything because we can win. I mean, that's our new thing, right? We can win. We're going to be winning so much we're going to get tired of winning. So that's bad pride. But there's also good pride. We don't generally condemn a person who does a job just well. We say, you could take pride in that work. I think we all agree, Richard can take pride in the door that he made and the woodworking he done. That's a skill. He's done that. He could be proud of it. He has a right to be proud. If you have a family member who has done something notable, you are rightfully proud of them. I think the Wardens can be proud of they have a son who builds bridges. That's something to be proud about. I'm proud, here's another example, I'm proud of my father's good name in my hometown. I imagine now he would be mostly forgotten. But my father grew up in this small city in Illinois and lived there most of his whole life until his late retirement years. And he had a very good reputation. If I grew up, if I had spent my career there, I'm sure I would have benefited from my father's good name. I know a lot of people knew me. Oh, you're Marty Franch's son. That was a good thing to be Marty Franch's son. And I take a lot of pride, I could say, in the way that he lived his life and that he was respected in this community. But even though I would have benefited from it, I would have no right to expect that would rub off on me in any way by, virtue of, I'm his son, so I'm worthy of this. I would have been challenged to have earned that same respect in my own life. And, had I not lived that kind of life, people would be saying, too bad about Marty Franch's son, he was a good guy. In fact, one of my favorite lines from what's generally called the Old Testament is when the people of Israel go to Samuel, who's a judge, and they say, and he's the judge over Israel, and people go to him and say, Samuel, thou art old, but thy sons walk not in thy ways. This is these prideful sons, So all this leads up to, in fact, is that, we can't take pride in our status as United States citizens. I had nothing to do with it being with that status. My grandparents could take pride in it. They earned it. That's active voice. They earned it. They came to this country. They became citizens. I became a citizen simply by being born here. Passive voice. As I'll argue in a moment, the appropriate response to such a great gift is humility. The key, I think, is that we can be proud of some great thing that our American ancestors have done. We can justifiably take pride in that heritage. But our job is in the here and now to move that heritage forward. To use another sports metaphor, each generation has its own at-bats. We had, if I was Cal Ripken IV or whatever, I couldn't expect to, he's a big name down in Baltimore, I could not expect to be given a slot on the Orioles because I was a descendant of a great batter. We have it in our power to advance the ideals of those who came before us. And we also have it in our power to besmirch that heritage. So a patriot should be careful of pride. Pride should be indulged in sparingly and for circumscribed occasions. Pride is not nearly as useful to the patriot as the emotion of shame. Let's talk about shame here for a few minutes. I can say that I feel shame at some of the things that this nation has done and is doing. Being able to feel shame is patriotic. I believe that you can't be ashamed of something for which you feel no connection. Lots of countries do terrible things, and I don't feel shame about them because they're not my country. When my country does that, I feel a connection. It's a sign of our identification, of our Americanness. If we love our country, we must be able to feel shame for it. Not to feel shame is, in fact, to have an incomplete relationship with our nation, with its past, and with our future. We're not unique in a question as a nation that's done horrible things and that struggles to recognize its misdeeds. The Germans bear a huge burden and still struggle how to deal with it. They're still thinking of creative ways. They're now putting memorial plaques on houses that wealthy Jewish people were forced to sell cheaply to Nazis in the 1930s. They're putting what they call stumbling blocks here and there in the streets where they have granite block streets, a little raised block with the name of somebody who died or a community that was destroyed. So people, as they go about their daily life, might, bump into this and look down and be forced to think about what their countrymen 3 generations back now did. Even little Belgium, and I don't think they've really grappled with this. We think of Belgium as a victim country in 2 world wars. Unleashed a Holocaust in the Congo of just titanic proportions. I don't know that they struggle with their Congo experience. I know that Japan still struggles with acknowledging their crimes against the people of China and Korea and other nations they occupied. The list can go on and on. We seem to have avoided our shame over the Vietnam War, which to many of us was, a major part of our lives. And we deal with this by forgetting it. You see the license plate brackets, Vietnam War veterans. We have now tours to Vietnam. Other than the few veterans, there are veterans tours now that are going back to Vietnam and doing reconstruction work and meeting up with people. But we as a culture have forgotten what we did to the Vietnamese, to the Laos, to the Cambodians, to the Hmong. I feel shame because I didn't work hard to prevent the sufferings of those people. One of the things in my life, I know younger people, I get kudos for, the things I did to some civil rights stuff. That certainly, I was out in these big Vietnam War demonstrations and all that. But, in the period when we were doing these horrible things, when we were dropping more bombs on a little teeny third world country than we dropped in Europe during World War II, I was getting graduate degrees and meeting and getting married and, doing all the things that you do in life. And, I don't know if I did more would have made any difference, but I still think back about this, all these points we have in our life that maybe we could do more. So let's make some distinctions here, just as I'd made with pride. There are deeds in our national past that are shameful, but not necessarily my shame. Some of you are absolved from not doing anything in Vietnam because you weren't around then or were very, very young. I didn't, but there are other things that are still part of our heritage. I did not do these things and could not have prevented them from happening. I did not enslave Africans, nor did I slaughter Indians. But it would be shameful for me not to acknowledge that history. Shameful not to acknowledge that some of our national heroes, some of the people you can, if you take out your wallet and look at the $20 bill, where for now we have Andrew Jackson, they did shameful things, even though those things were not the norm, or those things were the norm, were not considered shameful at the time. And it would be shameful for me not to acknowledge that this shameful history is part of my own story. I think one of the possibly unique things about being an American is that the newcomer inherits all the pride of the great things that we have done, but also inherits the shameful things we've done. It's like, if you buy a company, if you're a business, you buy a company. You buy its assets and you also buy its liabilities. You buy its buildings and you buy its debts. In this country, you become an American. You immediately, our ethos is you become part of its history, even part of that history that happened before you got here. So you can be part of two histories simultaneously. I realize that I am part of two stories. So part of my story happened in Eastern European Jewish villages, while at the same time things are going on in North America that would one day be part of my history, one day be part of the history of the grandson of people born in the land of the czars. What this means is that I can't say that I bear none of the moral burden of slavery because my family wasn't here in those days. Or I can't say that I bear none of the moral burden of the disposition of the Indians because slavery and genocide and relocation happened before I came. I can't say that because it's part of the history of my country, and I am now part of this history. It's part of me. So I have benefited in many ways from the evils of racism. Just think of those of us, if we think of even the intergenerational transfer of wealth. Some of us have benefited because our parents were able to buy homes in places where property values appreciated. Some people have lost out because their parents and grandparents weren't able to buy homes, or were only able to buy homes in areas where property values dropped. And needless to say, I bear shame not only for the shame of the past, but the shameful acts we do today. To use this old naval term made popular by Jimmy Carter back during the Iran crisis, what happens now happens on my watch. This is our watch. You and me, we weren't around way a long time ago, but we're here now. And so we're responsible. And that brings us to gratitude. You may think, this is a strange patriot that's standing up here. I've stated that I don't take pride in my status as an American. I've stated that we had shameful episodes in our past, and that I'm ashamed of many of the things that we do today. Wow, some patriot, huh? So let's turn to gratitude. Let me state here unequivocally and clearly, and let me proclaim for all to hear, that I am profoundly grateful to be an American. I have had opportunities to lead an enhancing and comfortable life, to seek my own religious path, to contribute to the larger good. I have lived in a pluralistic society with its rich associational life. Because my grandparents came here, they and their offspring did not perish in the Holocaust. This last statement would apply if they went to Australia, Brazil, or South Africa, as some of my family did, but my parents came here. And so, like grace in some theologies, American citizenship came on me unmerited, unearned, an almost arbitrary gift. This accident of history makes me heir to a great heritage. If anything, it should make me humble, not proud. I rejoice in my heritage, but I also remember this heritage brings with it burdens and responsibility. It is an estate left to me that requires careful cultivating. If I prayed, I would offer a prayer of thanksgiving that I have become part of the history of this country, or part of our story. Cicero, the great Roman senator and orator and philosopher, called gratitude not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of others, because it tells you how you should behave. How should I express this gratitude for being an American? One answer certainly is through active citizenship. The Baltimore Sun once carried an article about an elderly anti-Iraq war demonstrator who lives in a Baltimore retirement community. His name was Dr. Walter Ehrlich, who's 88. He was a European-born veteran of the Second World War. And he said, the Germans couldn't protest. Here, if I don't agree with what the president does, I must show it. You have to fight to defend your country. And that means not only going to other places, but right here in our own native land. Protesting the war was defending one's country, a sign of loving patriotism. So yes, when you're wrong, a patriot fights to set the country on the right course. The patriot is concerned about the rightness and wrongness of his or her country's actions and seeks to support the right and correct the wrong. I believe that our country is frequently wrong. I believe that it has done and still does shameful things for which I, as a citizen, ought to be and for which I am ashamed. But it's my country. It's my country. And I care about the wrongs that it commits in a way that's different from the way that I care about the wrongs that other nations commit. I am responsible for the wrongs of my own household, and this is my home. We care most for the misdeeds of the people we love. Now, I'm not exactly sure what Stephen Decatur meant when he offered his famous toast in 1816. Our country, in her intercourse with other nations, may she always be right. But our country, right or wrong. Now, maybe he was more nuanced in what he meant by this truculent toast and what it seemed to imply. But Karl Schurz, German immigrant who came to this country in 1848 and became a United States Senator, Karl Schurz was clear when he declared on the floor of the U.S. Senate in 1872, our country, right or wrong, when right, to be kept right, when wrong, to be put right. That is patriotism. Although we might from time to time be ashamed of what our country does, let us live so we can be proud of our own actions in seeking to put it in the right. This is true pride, true patriotism. I hope we can all be proud of what we, as patriotic Americans, do with our lives.
Yes.